Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the deck. We are super excited to be here this week, as we always are. My name is Jeremy Steinkohler. I'm here with my very good friends and amazing drummer educators, Rick Stojak.
Hey, everybody.
San Diego, Chip Ritter in Tucson, Arizona. Bart Roby. Wait a minute. Where's Bart Roby?
Where's Bart at?
That's Jim Royle from Connecticut. Hey, Jim.
Hey.
Thanks for being on the show again, man.
That's not Bart.
They're both bald.
Nice to see everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here again.
We're thrilled to have you, man. So today's show, we are dedicating to a debrief of the PASIC convention, which just wrapped up this past weekend. For those of you who don't know, PASIC is the conference hosted by the PAS, or the Percussive Arts Society. And every year they have the PASIC as the PAS International Conference. This year it was in Indianapolis. They had it in person. They had a combo show this year. They did it part virtual and part in person, whereas last year's show was all virtual. I've been there. I met Jim Royle there several years ago, which started off our great friendship and collaboration. And Jim has been going for the last, how many years, Jim?
This was my 33rd year.
Your 33rd year? Wow. 33 years. So, man, if anybody has a perspective,
that's correct.
If anybody has a perspective on the PASIC show and the evolution of the PASIC convention, it's you. You've been going there for forever. I don't even know when this thing started, but I'm sure you do. First, let's get to it. How was the show? What were some of your top level takeaways?
First of all, I want on my badge because you got to be official. It's going to bring back all the magic of being there. It was wonderful to see everyone, and I was not sure that how it was going to be. I think there was somewhere between 400 and 4,500 people that attended.
Wow.
So the attendance was so much greater. And that made you feel good. You saw just a lot of activity, a lot of bodies, and you're off to the races right from the first night. And Wednesday night was a tribute and the 100th birthday of the vibraphone.
Wow!
And they had 4 of the top vibraphonists performing with a rhythm section, honoring all the greats from Lionel Hampton. Right on up. And it was an incredible way to start. And you could just feel the magic in the air. It was fantastic.
Wow. So cool. Man, I've always said that if I could come back next life and play another instrument, it would be the vibes.
The vibes.
There seems to be a big connection with drummers and playing either mallets or vibes, because Lionel Hampton played great drum set.
Right.
Milt Jackson, Gary Burton. I mean, they in their biographies, etc., they talk about, I started on snare drum, I went to drum set, and they evolved into playing melodics, which having both of those combinations, which I'm a great supporter of, it just enhances everything that we do as drummers and becoming musicians, and it's evident. And one of the vibraphonists was Jason Marsalis.
Oh, I know.
Of the Marsalis family.
Yep. Wow. He's a great player. He also plays drum set as well. He plays great drum set.
So it was Joe Locke and some others, and it's something else on how that all comes together and actually makes musical sense for sure. Cool. And that was just the first night, so we felt great about that. But next morning, I mean, I kind of highlighted things too, and in the program book, because I wanted to make sure I was on my game.
I see the book.
And
show us the book a little bit more.
Sure. That program book. And get it. Well, it's over here. And it's just filled, with the whole schedule about the artists, all the expo room with all the great gear, so you can check everybody out. That was a little smaller this year, which is understandable. The expo, for one, it's a very expensive endeavor for the companies. And on top of that, with issues with getting materials to keep their product going, they had to make some very, they had to make a lot of decisions, and I'm not going to name any, but there were some companies that just weren't there, but understand.
For those of you who have been to the NAMM show, imagine the drum hall only. So it's like drums, everything percussion, vibes, books, drum books, and it's a fraction of the size, right? It's much, much smaller, but it's like sort of a NAMM show for just drums, I guess I would say. The expo. This is the expo part of the conference. So it's like there's these clinics and classes and presentations and performances going on all day long in various giant ballrooms. And then there's like an expo hall that you can, leave any of the clinics at any time or in between and just walk through and, do like the NAMM thing. So you're checking out, drumsticks and you're talking to sales reps and stuff like that. So that's going on full time when from 9 to 5 or whatever the hours are. And then you sort of pop in and out of the expo hall to go to see your conferences, to your clinics and performances and panel discussions.
That's great. So it's like NAMM for drummers,
right?
But with a higher focus on clinics and education.
Yes.
That is just so
absolutely
fantastic.
Yeah. It's really.
Hey guys, Peter Ratscliffe says hi, and Sharon Ranson says hello, everybody. They're watching us.
Oh,
hey,
fantastic.
Hey,
Sharon and Peter.
Sharon.
Actually,
Peter.
Peter's going to be our guest. Is it next week? No, the 30th. Peter Retzlaff is going to be our guest from the Drummers Collective in New York City. We're excited to have him on. Hey, Peter, thanks for tuning in.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Okay, so Jim, you the first night was the Vibes Summit, all those top performers. And then I know the Expo Hall was lighter this year, which as expected because of COVID. I know there were some big companies that opted out this year. Did you sort of plan out you looked at the program and you planned out your day each day, like, oh, at 9 o'clock, I'm going to catch this performance, at 11 o'clock, I'm going to go to this clinic. And then is that how it went for you?
Absolutely. I mean, outside of the program book, they also have an app where you can, check. So many people are using their app and savvy with that now on their phone, and they have the same schedule and you can mark things as you see it, but it doesn't mean that you're going to change. I mean, suddenly I could bump into you or someone and my friendship with you or someone else is more important sometimes than maybe seeing something because you got catching up to do. You have some business to take care of. And again, when we were talking about the longevity, I've been going since 1987, where it was St. Louis. I mean, I've seen, and that was my first year and I was in college at the time. And I went drum set crazy where I didn't check out other things, Latin percussion, mallets, frame drumming, whatever it was. But after a while, it's overwhelming. So and it's smart to check other parts of the drumming and percussion world out. Yeah. Even though you can go, oh, Steve Smith's playing. And again, some years I might miss his because I've seen him before. He's been to our chapter. I love him, but you got to make choices.
Right.
And it's hard. I mean, sometimes you'll split and see half of a clinic and then run to another because you want to respect one of your colleagues. It's not easy, but you got to get that out of your head and do the best that you can at the time.
Yeah, I remember that feeling.
And know that in the drop.
Jim, your audio's cutting in and out quite a bit. So sometimes if we interrupt you, it's not on purpose. It's just there's a pause there, so we don't know if you're still talking. I remember feeling that same way when we went the one time. There were clinics I wanted to see, but then there was a Vic Firth team meeting, and then there was a Sabian Education team meeting, and I felt pulled in all these different directions. So I'd sort of go to one for a little bit, then leave, and then get distracted by meeting great people. Anyways, so what were some of your other favorite clinics or presentations you saw?
Well, that first Thursday morning, Clayton Cameron did a brush clinic.
Oh, awesome.
Oh my
And
God.
Nice.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's cool.
you know, and that's a big part of what I love to do. And whether it's someone getting inspired to do it, or it's a pro that's been playing forever, you never get enough of hearing the masters, execute their craft, and talk about their journey. I mean, he's played with Tony Bennett, he's played with everybody, Sammy Davis Jr. I mean, so what he brought to the table to revisit that again is priceless. So what a great way to start the day with.
Jim, is there anything that stood out in that specific clinic that you had as a takeaway?
Yes. That he definitely had his routine of how he was presenting, but he went through a lot of tap dancers that he studied that brush playing back then worked well with, and how he was imitating the tap dancing with his brushes and getting the different sounds, whether it's the sweep or the top of the brush, whatever it was. And it really can get a picture in your mind of how we need to create the art. I mean, it's like he's painting and tapping. I mean, so that really hit me very much when we talked about it in that way.
Chip,
for sure.
Chip, I have a question for you, Chip. Can you juggle brushes?
No, I'm allergic to brushes.
No, I think the answer is not yet. Not yet. Only if they're on fire.
Only if they're on fire. That's right.
Wow, Jim, that's amazing. Clayton Cameron, he's one of the brush heroes. I mean, I don't know if you guys are familiar with his book. I think it's called Brushworks, but that's something I have in my library. And that's a fantastic resource. And he's just one of the top brush players. And those guys, man, they're like magicians. They really are like magicians with the brushes. It's like sometimes, I mean, I play brushes and I know, I can hold my own, but man, nothing like that. And when you really watch the artists, the top guys play the brushes, it's like, wow, that's a whole lifetime. It's like another instrument practically.
Jeremy, how many of your students work brushes?
Well,
percentage.
My jazz kids, when they get into playing jazz, eventually, maybe by senior year, if they're in the high school jazz band, they have to play one tune with brushes or something.
Yeah.
Or if they're in a combo, it happens more quickly. So we get into some basic patterns. I'm not like, I don't feel like, the expert or anything, but I have Ed Thigpen's video. I have the Steve Smith brushes video. I have Ed Thigpen's book and Clayton Cameron's book. And then I have these, you guys familiar with the ProLogix pads, the practice pads? Mm-hmm. They have these plastic inserts that go sort of sit in the pad that are for brush playing. So they're smooth and the brush doesn't stop on the rubber. And they have brush patterns printed out on the insert. So you can sort of trace the pattern on the plastic drum head inside the practice pad. So I use those. That's really cool too.
That'd be good for you to show when we do our Deck the Halls episode, where we feature different products.
Good call, man. Good call. Anyways, but my rock drummers, we hardly ever get into it. I don't know. So not everyone, but some, maybe a third, maybe a fifth of my students get into brushes, and maybe.
Okay. Oh, I think that's a good number.
Jeremy, you just made me think of something.
What's up?
Another aspect that Clayton spoke about, and I was familiar with it, but it was him to mention it, that Joe Jones, Papa Joe, would always carry a newspaper beneath his arm, so he always had something to play on the brushes because it sounded so great. He would sit in playing on a newspaper
on a table.
So people always think I have to have a drum or I have to have a special drum pad. Some people I remember seeing Adam Nussbaum use up top of a pizza box.
Yeah.
In an interview, which also sounds really cool. So a newspaper, a pizza box, whatever it is, you can practice your brushes and not make another excuse not to do it.
There's the teacher coming out.
Like you need a special snare drum.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, so we could go to Pepe's in New Haven and get a pizza box, Jim. We could go to Pepe's or Modern Pizza.
We're definitely going to go to Pepe's.
Box. Yeah.
If you come to Connecticut, I'll take you.
Nice.
It's happening, man.
Okay, so boy,
it's been a long time since I've been back home.
So far, that sounds like 2 for 2. You had the Vibe Summit and then Clayton Cameron Brush presentation. Yeah. That sounds awesome.
Right, well, I want to continue on that note to stay in this moment. This gentleman, Ulysses Owens Jr. Okay, can you guys see that? Okay, now do you know Ulysses Owens Jr.? You're familiar with him?
I know the name.
Just by name.
Okay, so I knew him by name. He did a clinic the next day and it said modern jazz brushes, and I was almost not going to go. But I'm like, I got to go. I got to go check this out. Yeah. It was one of the highlights for me of the show.
Wow.
And he talked about this book, had it up on the screen. He was showing different things. I love modern technology. This was at my doorstep when I got home from PASIC. Wow. I went online and bought it. And I couldn't wait. Well, I didn't want to come home, but I couldn't wait to get home because I wanted to open this up. But two of his heroes on brushes were Kenny Washington, the great Kenny Washington, who's one of the top, small group jazz drummers alive, who's in New York City, and also the great Louis Nash. And what one said and then what the other said, and he kept putting things together. And he also played with a trio. He played with a vibe trio. And I was blown away. I was absolutely blown away by his brush playing. And one of the teachers that he had was someone I got to work with, the great Vernel Fournier from New Orleans, who played on the iconic recording Live at the Pershing with Ahmad Jamal.
Yep. He's famous for right?
Right. Everything on Live at the Pershing, that recording, it's like a college class. And I studied with him almost a year in New York City. And I would go pick him up, and then we would drive down to Avenue A and go to a studio and have the lesson. I got so much out of our driving to the studio, just talking with him. It was, I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. He really helped my brush playing immensely. So Vernel Fournier is another one.
Cool.
People got to check it out. If you haven't checked it out, you got to check him out.
Cool.
So, but Ulysses Owens Jr., unbelievable. So I don't want to get too far ahead. So if you wanted to jump in,
no,
I'm okay.
I'm finding the link to Live at the Pershing and putting it in our chat.
Brush and whiten your teeth.
Right.
You brush and whiten your teeth.
I brushed this off.
This is all just day one and the morning of day one. So how many days was the convention?
It's full days is Thursday through Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah. So Wednesday you arrive and they have a concert at night, and then it opens up after that.
Right. And don't you have to be a member of the Percussive Arts Society to go to the conference?
You do. And this year it was actually, they gave the price was like almost cut in half. They were really helping people out. If you wait and just come to the show and you're not a member, it's very expensive. And it's so worth it to be a member because you get a journal like this every other month, and then their online presence with what they offer is fantastic. I feel like you got to be a part of it. You want to be in it. That's what we do. I think it's vital.
So can you tell us a little bit
Really
more
important.
about Percussive Art Society in general to all of the students out there who might be considering joining?
Absolutely. It goes back to when I was in college, but sometimes, like, I brought one of our students who was in high school. It's eye-opening because it's educational, motivational. Everything is in there for you, where you can meet and greet possible professors that you want to study with or artists you want to work with. It's just endless, the resources that this organization can give you. Plus, in your state, you have your own chapter. So your chapter usually puts on a day of percussion as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if it's a bigger state like California, they might have 3 days of percussion because it's just too much ground to cover. I so enjoyed it. I mean, like, again, I was chapter president for 17 years, and I loved bringing all that wealth of information and performers and educators to our state to share with everyone. And it changes lives because how do you not get motivated and excited about being around these amazing performers and educators?
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer. You should be a member of PAS.
Are there international chapters as well?
Yes, absolutely. Whether it's Japan or Indonesia, France, Italy, and we had talked about this a little bit, but some of our travels, being in PAS and having those relationships helped us when we toured in Italy, helped us when we went to China, because you link up with the different chapter presidents and or officers that can help you make contacts that you need to make.
Cool.
So once again, how do you it's a win-win. Unbelievable.
So as a chapter president, what were your responsibilities?
The responsibility is, I mean, you have officers, you have a vice president, you might have a treasurer, you could have somebody who does marketing, etc. But you're overseeing all of the activity that happens, whether you put on a big day of percussion or try to put on other smaller events. And I took it on where I'm calling the artists. I'm setting up the funding with the companies. And you're meeting everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, while you're doing something great for your chapter, you're also putting yourself out there to meet so many people and see how the industry works. So I loved it. And I took it very seriously. It was a joy. The companies, just like you guys do with Aquarian, they would send door prizes, and I wanted it to always be like Christmas. I mean, we had more door prizes than we had people at the events. It was amazing.
Awesome.
I mean, whether it was a snare drum or a cymbal or whatever it was, I wanted people to go home with something and feel great.
Man, you can really hear the passion in your voice when you talk about it. It's really cool. You've been doing it. I can imagine after 33 years, you might be like, oh, I've been to this thing 100 times. I don't need to go to another one. It's the same old. But man, you light up when you talk about it, and it's cool to hear, and it's cool to see your enthusiasm. And I think every drummer should go to this at some point. I know it's a big expense. I want to mention that the PAS does have discounted memberships available for students, discounted around for students. They have different levels of membership, so it's not a fortune. I think the student membership's like $50 for the year or something like that. And then,
good.
Then there's the
right.
Then there's the ticket to the conference, which is its own. I forget how much that costs. It's like a couple $100, or maybe more for
right. This year, I think this year was $60.
Yeah. So it's not a big
Yeah,
expense.
they really discounted it.
And you do get access to all kinds of resources, and you're dialed into the larger community. I mean, really, that's kind of what this is about, right? Is it not? It's just about the community. We're all for years and years and years, right? I only knew drummers locally. I didn't connect with drummers around the country. I didn't sort of swim in the pool of the bigger names, and it wasn't until I published my book and I started going to the NAMM show regularly, and I went to PASIC, and then we started the DEC, that I started, interacting with these guys, and gals, and they're all just great people, just doing what they love to do, and being a part of PAS, and going to the PASIC convention, and going to the NAMM show, and going to when we have our hosting our DEC weekend for drum clinics. Those are ways to just interact with the community and be inspired by other drummers and see what other people are getting into, and broaden your horizons and enrich your drumming life, and make friends.
You just
nailed it. You completely nailed it. It's all about the community, and what I experience every time I go to PASIC, I want to bring a piece of that home and bring it to, whether when I was chapter president, bring it to our day of percussion, or to the studio, to ensembles, like things here. I mean, on the first day, I saw a high school ensemble perform from Texas. Now, we're pretty good, but one of my students who was there, he got to see what is above that. Then you want to reach for that. You want to reach for that. Yeah. I want to come home. I want us to be better. I want us to do better. Right? I mean, so I can't agree more. It's all about community. Again, all the relationships all these years, you could be walking around and someone just taps you on your shoulder, and it could be someone that you met 5-6 years ago, or someone goes, "Hey, I've heard about you," and you're kind of like, "Get out of here." I mean, like, it's very humbling. Like, you're like, "What?" Like, I heard what you do, and boy, it makes you feel great. Like, something that you're offering, and your book, Jeremy, was talked about a lot.
Really?
It had yes, and people were talking about it, and then I told the story about how we met, and how you were so kind and you handed me one of your books. I mean, where else is that going to happen? That's so unusual.
Oh, that's great to hear, Jim. That's really gratifying. I'll talk to you some more about it offline. That's cool.
Sure, absolutely. I was paying people to check it out.
I was going to say, so all my my payments worked out. Yeah.
So I know that you guys work together on an online presentation,
right?
So is that still available?
That's correct.
So tell us about that, guys. Your online presentations for PASIC.
But before what it was, I know that if you're a member of PAS, it's online, and then you can watch it. That I'm sure of. I'm not sure how long, or if then they'll transfer it to archives, but it'll be there for sure.
I was told it would be up through the end of the year.
Right, Jeremy?
I was told it would be up through the end of the year.
Oh, okay.
So you can, even if you weren't a member of PAS and you didn't go to the conference, you could sign up now to become a member for $50 or whatever, and then have access to all the online presentations, the virtual presentations that were part of this year's conference, that are still up and online, including mine and Jim's. Yeah, so that was something unique this year, or last year, because of COVID, and then they extended it to this year, where they did kind of a hybrid show where they had virtual presentations. Up until this point, I don't think they've ever done that. Is that correct, Jim?
They have not.
Right. So, pretty cool. You're right. I mean, because there were a lot of people who couldn't make it. There's always a lot of people who can't make it, or couldn't make it. Maybe there were COVID concerns or travel concerns, whatever. So there was a part of the program that you could access virtually, and I think Jim said there were 20 different virtual presentations. And so, when you apply to present at PASIC, you have to go through a pretty involved application process, and you really have to have your stuff well put together, right?
You gotta have your ducks in a row.
You got to have your ducks in a row, right? I mean,
Yes.
Since we've been anointed with the technology, Chip.
Thank you.
That's my line.
I'm sorry, I had to put it. Anyway, so you apply, and there's different committees that are part of the organization. So there's a drum set committee, there's a world music committee, there's a mallets probably committee, I'm guessing. There's all different sort of subsets of the percussion world that have the education committee that have their, what do you call, area that they focus on. And then based on the type of presentation you want to offer, you apply to the appropriate committee to do it. So if you want to put on a drum set clinic, you apply to the drum set committee. And, Joe Bergamini is on as one of the dudes on the committee there. So, and they get all their submissions, which I'm sure number in the, probably dozens to over 100, right, easily each year. And then
Certainly.
they pick based on, the programming and who's been there before and how does it fit with the rest of the programming. I'm sure there's a big, whatever plan for that meeting. And then, so we got selected to present virtually. And the topic of our presentation was how to build a thriving teaching studio. And we didn't really talk so much about private lessons, but really building it beyond private lessons. So we sort of, it wasn't like hey, if you're just starting out and want to start teaching private lessons, this is what you do. It was not that. It was really, for people who've been teaching private lessons and want to expand their programs, because Jim has the Jim Royle Drum School, which has multiple ensembles with steel drums. He teaches all different percussion there: snare drum, drum set, mallets, steel drums, and he has all these different ensembles. And the ensembles perform and they tour. And he's built this his own thriving community of percussion there in Connecticut. And I started Bandworks back in 1993 out here in the Bay Area, which is a school of rock and roll kind of program. And this is before the movie came out. And this is before School of Rock existed.
You had it first, Jeremy.
We did have it first, man. We did. And we now have, or before COVID, we were up to about 40 bands every quarter. So that means we had 40 groups that would be part of our program, that would rehearse with one of our coaches, our teachers, and then perform at a venue at the end of their 8 weeks. And then we have summer camps, and we see over maybe 1,200 students every year. So both Jim and I have built these programs that are not just, we also still have our private lessons, but we built this other thing, a business basically. And the presentation was all about our stories, what we learned along the way, what we see as the most important pieces to be successful. We talked about taking risks and taking leaps of faith. We talked about surrounding yourself with the right people to help you on your mission, and all different kinds of things like that. There was some logistics, but it was mostly conceptual and, inspirational, I hope. Yeah.
Right.
That's cool.
Very much looking forward to
the part of it. The part of it that I felt bad about was that we were looking forward to the question and answering part. Live, you're gonna be cueing people's interest and wanting to ask questions, and you can't have that in a virtual presentation like that. So, because I had been on calls before at PASIC, and I know that it sparked interest because people would come up after or during and go, "What did you do? How did you do it? I want to talk to you." Right. And then 2 or 3 years later, they're like, "Hey, by the way, I started, and whatever." And so I'm hoping it still can reach a lot of people. And then we also put in there that please reach out to us with any questions that you have, because that's where you get into the cracks, and you can really, it's about helping people and inspiring them to not be afraid, again, to take the leap, because it can be very daunting to make that move. And we express that equally, going from your in-house studio to a storefront and et cetera, et cetera. Those are big moves, and people need support. just like I needed support from other people, you know, said, you know, they were mentoring me to make certain moves and make sure I did it the correct way. And sometimes the correct way doesn't work either. Then you got to shift. But so I'm hoping it reaches out, it gets to people, and we inspire some future entrepreneurs that want to do the same. That was our goal. So I hope that we reach that.
That's very cool. So take us back to PASIC. You saw that clinic with the brushes. What was next?
Yes. Okay. Are any of you familiar with Marcus Gilmore?
Heard his name before.
Know the name.
Okay. He reminded me, and I've heard great things about him. He's played with everyone. He reminded me of a Jack DeJohnette modern player in the funk world. So he did a lot of playing, and sometimes that happens where there's not a lot of interaction or almost any talking at all, and that's hard for a lot of people to take something away from that. You get inspired by amazing drumming, but you walk out of there and go, how did he get to that? How did he do that? So you have to decide, are you going to reach out? Are you going to, you know what I mean? So sometimes you walk out of there and you're like, you don't know what to do with what you just heard, you know?
Yeah.
But his playing was immense. Here's one. You guys all know who this is. John Royle, once again, is just he's the doctor. He's the professor. I mean, he did an amazing clinic on comping and using different phrasing within the measures, and he gets deep. He gets so deep, and it was you had to be ready. Either you needed a cup of coffee or you needed a nap after his clinic, because it was so strong.
Wow.
Take all in, but you want that. You want to get a boost. You know, you want to test yourself. I remember one time said at one of the events that I went to that he would take Modern Drummer magazine, he'd read it from front cover to back cover, and anything that was transcribed or any exercise that was in the magazine, he had to make sure he could do it. That blew my mind. Like
stuff in the Modern Drummer
to make the commitment to take the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, whether it's something that's in his wheelhouse or not, he keeps evolving, even though he's the main drummer for the Village Vanguard Orchestra, you know, Thad Jones, Mel Lewis's old group. But he wants to keep growing. And I that says a lot to all of us on, don't just get stuck in your little niche. Be careful, you know, and because in today's world, the more versatile we are, the more we're going to work. And I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Right on.
Fantastic.
Great. Hey, Jim, did you get to see Joe Bergamini's clinic, our brother from the Sabian Education Network and friend of the show? Did you get to see him?
Yes, I did. And I did. And I kept throwing tomatoes.
Wait, he'd make tomato sauce out of it, so he'd love it.
You should just make sure you stamp the DEC logo on the tomatoes before you throw them.
Man.
Yes, I did. Yeah, he was on a panel. He was the moderator of a panel that talked about how you evolved and survived the pandemic with virtual teaching. And on that panel, it was Jim Toscano and Murray Piper, who I think I met through you guys.
Yep. Yes,
Murray the man.
He came up to me afterwards because he had masks on, and said my name, and I'm like, because we hadn't met, so it was so wonderful to meet him. We had a half-hour conversation. It was beautiful.
Murray's a great guy.
Once again, that's what PAS is all about.
Yes.
Relationships. So it was a great clinic for people to get different parts of being a virtual teacher and how to make that happen. I want to keep, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So you thought you got so much that day, and then at 5 o'clock, one of the last clinics of the day, it was Rich Redmond.
Now there's a guy
Rich
who
Redmond
will give you a
is
great clinic.
a national
drummer.
Yep.
What's that, Chip?
Jason Aldean's
Yeah,
drummer.
it's like yes, right, and it's like he's Sebastian Maniscalco, like doing a presentation. He's so animated, so much fun to listen to, and so inspiring, and plays the crap out of the drums. And he's done it right. So you want to listen to him.
He has a crash course in success deal that he does too on his website. There's a whole book on having success in the drum industry. It's a great book. Crash Course. Crash.
It's a great book. I picked it up a couple of years ago. I love it. I suggest and encourage everyone to get that book. It's another great book. So the evening concert on Thursday was Tommy
Igoe.
So look out, Tommy Igoe. It was a keyboard player that played left-hand bass. You did not miss the bass player. This guy was on fire. And then a guitar player. So it was kind of a rock fusion-y thing. And Tommy doesn't mess around, man. I mean, he was right in there. I mean, he got everybody going. It was a fabulous concert.
Man.
Yeah, fabulous concert.
Yeah. I mean, just
so that was just Thursday.
Just thinking about all this stuff in such a small amount of time, you've seen so many intense and inspirational performances and clinics. It's just hard to imagine how much you know. So I can imagine my head be spinning by the end of the day.
It is, and you can get very mentally fatigued, but you're so fired up that you try to work through it. Because I have this feeling of I'm not going back to my room to take a nap. I can nap later.
Mm-hmm.
I want to take in everything I can while I'm there and soak it in. And I'll nap when I get home. I'll take a little sleep when I get home. I'm there for a reason. I have a job to do. You need to see all this stuff in as much as you can. So I agree with you. It's like, and then once you get back, you have to, like, most of the time you're getting right back into teaching, but you have to let it sink in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, and throughout the week, different parts of it come out and get you re-inspired, and you want to get to your drum kit. You know, you want to, you know, whatever instrument you play in percussion, you just have a different little pep in your step on how you're doing it. Mm-hmm. If that kind of paints that picture, it's truly motivating.
Yeah.
Fired up is right. So there was another clinic I went to. Again, I wasn't familiar with who the presenter was. He was someone who teaches at Rowan College, and it was about samba school interpretations and how you would do that. Now we're going to put that on drum kit, but this was about doing and using the real instruments. But when I walked into the clinic, there weren't any of those handheld instruments. So I'm like, are we going to see just a presentation? And I'm like, is it going to be a yawn fest? What's going to happen? It was one of the best clinics I went to also. He had standing up. He had us, like, you know, going side to side. He had us clapping, using different parts of our body and singing different parts, melodies. You know, you got to step out of your comfort zone again. And we're all professionals, or you're in college or you're in high school. You're there to try to grow. So you have to try to put away, like, all your bravado and just go in there and just go for it and make something happen.
Right on.
And I loved it. It was a great clinic. You're going to get something out of it. You're going to get always. And that's why I encourage people not to just go to every drum set clinic. Check something out. Now, your friend who you had on,
Kara.
God, maybe it was a month ago. What was her name?
Kara Wildman.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I snuck into her clinic for about half. And you may not know anything about that instrument and what it is, but how could you be the same after you check that out?
Yeah.
Now you're inquisitive about it, and how can I do any of that maybe on the drum kit in some way?
Right.
Why not? Or buy a frame drum or a boron. I mean, I'm after seeing one of those years ago, I went and bought one. Yeah. I don't play it very well. Actually, I play it terribly. But it's okay. I think I have a few more weeks on this earth. I'll work on it some more.
Sometimes it's good to have something to suck at.
Oh, listen. You know what? I think that's really Chip. What you just said is really important. I really do, because it's so easy. We've been playing drums a long, long time. I started when I was 10 years old. I'm 51. So that's 40 years playing drums. I'm pretty freaking good at playing drums. You guys are monster players. It's easy to forget what it's like to be a beginner.
Yeah, it is.
What the beginner's mind is like. And not only is it good for our brains to create new, neural pathways and continue learning, but it's good to be humble. It's good to remember what it's like to be a beginner, because that's what our students are going through.
Yes.
And I've had students come to me, telling me stories how they were in tears from these, lessons they had with these awful teachers who were, pushing them really hard and had these high expectations that they couldn't meet because the teachers didn't really understand where they were at. They were, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And it's just so important to be a beginner. It's so good for you. It's so healthy. It's so humbling. And it's a good reminder that we're all the same and that we all start from the same place.
That's it. And Jim, you hit on something that I think is very, very key when you saw Kara play, the thought of how can I apply this frame drum to my drum set playing, and for experienced players, coming up with something fresh is always a goal. And so anything new that we can get some inspiration from and apply is great. And we know the most well-rounded drummers, have studied a little bit of everything and then they make it their own. So remember, your synapses must be going crazy after this weekend with thoughts of how you can apply it to your different instruments.
Cool.
Absolutely. And you made me think of, if we could just take a quick step back, with Ulysses Owens Jr. Somebody asked, why do you have the snares off while you play brushes? And it's something that Vernell talked about and some other people that I got to study with. And there's something about that crispness and clarity that sounds fantastic with brushes. I mean, who's going to think, unless they work with somebody, that, oh, yeah, you could turn the snares off and it's okay. People think there's right and wrong and there's nothing else. And so I think there were so many people in that clinic that suddenly went, oh, I could turn the snares off and still play and it's all right. Absolutely. Just like we could do it with sticks. I love taking my snare drum and suddenly make it into like a timbali sound or whatever, and use all different kinds of muting and everything to create different tones. But again, till we hear it, till we see somebody, and that we go again about, don't be afraid to go and check out a clinic and see somebody play. Obviously, live gives you so much more in the moment energy, but you want to hear it somehow, somewhere. And I think a lot of people walked out that day going, I'm going to try that. I'm going to turn my snares off and work on my brush playing. So I thought that was kind of neat.
Very cool.
That is so cool.
Inspired.
You know what I gather from this too is that the community of percussion and drum set and is getting brought together. You know, I was at a Vic Firth artist event a bunch of years ago, and all of the drum corps guys and girls were over in one corner. All of the set players were over in another corner. And it was like this wall there, you know? And, you know, I that was a bunch of years ago. I think that, you know, the community is getting tighter and tighter, but an event like that really has to bring it together.
Absolutely. And they have a marching sector where they have competitions with colleges and high schools. And they might have a snare drum contest. They have a mallet contest where you're picking certain pieces and then you're being adjudicated, whether you're on a high school level or college level. So, yeah, you could participate in that. You could go watch it, and that really opened me up immensely back then to things I really didn't know about. So I know we're starting to run out of time. But there was a few other people that I wanted to mention, and I had seen him before, but something told me I want to go see him again, and it was Steve Ferroni. Steve Ferroni, he says Ferroni.
Tom Petty.
Tom Petty, and he's a heartbreaker. And,
Yeah.
you know, and he's 71 years old.
Wow.
He's 71, and he looked great. He played fantastic, but his message to everyone was that I'm still playing at 71 because I play for the song.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, I'm not going to sit here. I'm not going to play a bunch of calisthenics and chop fest. He goes, I don't do that. But, you know, he was in the Average White Band. He was the original drummer.
Yeah.
Right. He's played with Eric Clapton. I mean, he's played with everybody. And then he also said this, guys, he said, I just got a call from John Mayer to go out on the road in the spring and summer. He goes, I guess at 71, I still got it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He sure does.
John Mayer could pick anybody he wants.
Right. That's awesome.
You know, you'd think he'd pick maybe somebody, you know, younger or whatever, but no, he wanted Steve because of what he brings to the table.
Yeah. Yeah. We talk about that
I thought
a lot.
that was you.
That is fantastic. We that's cool. A subject that's come up, a theme that's come up quite a bit in our interviews with some great drummers and our discussions amongst ourselves about how paramount playing for the song is, and you know, putting your ego aside and really, you know, remembering that you're trying to deliver something that's not just about the drums. That's great. And Steve Ferroni is one of the best.
How to be a piece of the whole.
Yeah. Cool.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that was big. And I truly enjoyed it. And he's a character. I'd love to see, you know, on deck get him. I just think
I've met him a few times at NAMM. He's a great guy. I love his accent.
He would be all the entertainment you need. He would be fantastic. So towards the end of that day, and was Saturday, Dave Garibaldi does the last clinic. I mean, here, like, it just keeps coming and keeps coming, you know. And Dave Garibaldi, still on tour. Now, I know we're all getting a little older. He's 75 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
There wasn't a speck of anything you felt that wasn't there. He's like the Tom Brady of drums.
Yeah. Yeah.
Except,
I mean, you know,
except he doesn't cheat.
Yeah, he doesn't cheat.
Oh! 49er fan.
I heard something about. I heard something about magic sticks or something.
So tell us about the Garibaldi clinic. What stood out for you?
Okay. That's not my phone. Okay, cool. So he talked, he played a little bit, he played to a track, and then he started to talk to us. and he said something that I never heard before. He said that when he was in high school, that he and his buddies, and one of the guys that was his buddy was one of the members of Tower of Power that he ended up forming that band with. They snuck into, and I hope I get this right, the Fillmore East. Is that correct, Jeremy?
Fillmore West.
Fillmore West. Yeah.
I mean, if it's out here, Fillmore East is back East Coast. Was.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, my geography gets messed up. So he said that they snuck in and got to hear James Brown with the two drummers when they were, I think, recording that very famous album at that venue.
Wow.
And how it completely changed him. Like, we're talking about what's the aha moment? What is, when do you really get it? And he said that changed him in his trajectory of where he wanted to go by hearing James Brown in a rehearsal and then the gig. And they weren't even supposed to be in there because they weren't old enough. But somehow they got in. It changed his life.
Yeah.
That blew me away. I was good. I was good with that.
Yeah. Awesome.
And how important those moments are.
Yeah.
So and then he went on to talk about other moments of his life. How, again, I've never heard him talk about how, I started out on a little snare drum and da 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 da. I mean, we just know all the linear drumming and all his amazing Tower of Power playing.
Right.
Well, he started like we all did too.
Right.
He started out with wanting a snare drum and having to work to buy it, and then et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. I think a lot of times we just feel like, Dave Garibaldi he was put on this earth and he was plopped into Tower of Power.
Right.
But there's very similar, and that so many of us can reach those same heights if you're consistent enough and you work hard enough, and maybe you get a break along the way, and you're humble and all those things. It really talks to you. I don't know. It did to me. He spoke to me.
Really cool.
He really, yeah. It was fantastic. So, and then the last concert was Robert Glasper's trio. Are any of you familiar with him?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with him. Who's he?
Okay. He's a piano player that it's kind of like Herbie Hancock, more modern funk of today. They go a little bit out, but not so far where people will go, I don't want to listen to this. Jeremy, do you agree?
Yeah, that's a pretty good description. Sort of snarky,
okay.
puffy.
His drummer, right. He tends to do it in smaller groups, and their interplay was amazing. It was fantastic. I'm also, watching the time because I have a student coming in on the hour, but I wanted to make sure that we wrap up and that you may want to say some things. I don't want to get in the way of that.
No, this has been great, Jim. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all your experiences and your enthusiasm and your excitement about it, man. It makes me feel like, dang it, I wish I had gone, and I'm definitely going next year for sure.
Yes.
So hopefully we'll see all you guys at the PASIC convention next year and at the NAMM show in June. And we're working on setting up a DEC clinic day in California here sometime in the next few months. So we'll let you know about that too. Jim, as always, great to have you, man. I feel like you're sort of like the foreign correspondent for our news show here.
Yeah, he's the East Coast correspondent for
exactly.
DEC.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Reporting for DEC.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, we'll see you before not too long.
It's my pleasure. I love hanging with you guys and talking our art form and music and camaraderie and everything that goes with it. It's special, and it means a lot to me, and I appreciate it.
Right on, man. It means a lot to us too. And thanks again for coming on. And We'll see you guys. Thanks for all you people for tuning in. Sharon and Tony, great to see you guys out there. And we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye, guys. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.